Welcome back to the Form is Temporary podcast, and we're very delighted for this Gameweek 19 preview, welcome on a member of the FPL community. He's been on the FPL show many times. He's been on doing his content with the likes of Hub and many others. So we're excited to get on Abdul. He is the legend of the community that really his ranks do show, just how well he's doing. So Abdul, firstly, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, guys. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. Very kind introduction there as well. So cheers.
No worries. No, it's an absolute pleasure to get you on, Abdul. Really, really appreciate you spending your time this week. And as always, I've got my trusty co-host to preview Gameweek 19 alongside me. So how are you, Chris?
I'm very well, thank you, Roberto. Yeah, I'm glad to be back in the starting lineup again after a little bit of a hiatus. And yeah, just hope everyone had a good Christmas. And yeah, thank you, Abdul, for joining us. I know I've leaned on your wisdom quite a few times listening to the fantasy show, so it's going to be brilliant hearing what you have to think about Game Week 19.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going to say it at the start of the pod because, of course, this kind of busy period around New Year's, there are a lot of deadlines, and you've got to remember to lock your team in ahead of the deadline. So it is a 1 p.m. deadline on Sunday. So yeah, recording this on Saturday afternoon. So yeah, do remember to get your team locked in ready. And we're going to, in this one, look back at how we got on the last couple of game weeks. We had a great pod last time out with FPL Boona, so I really enjoyed that one. And there were some interesting results for our differentials we picked out last game week. So we'll briefly talk through that and see how Chris, Abdul and myself got on in game week 18. We'll also look ahead to this game week 19, which, is the kind of last games of 2024. So we'll be looking to end the year on a high. Also, we've got the mini league that we always have and see how the Game Week 18 results got on there. And of course, we will then also reflect on our potential transfer plans ahead of the deadline tomorrow. And we end with the quiz, which is always a nice, fun way to end. So I've got a 2024 theme to this one this time around. So we'll see how Chris can do up against Abdul for that one. But yeah, really looking forward to this one. So if you are watching us live on YouTube, thanks for joining. But if you're listening back on the audio as well, thanks for listening as always. So we're going to get into this one straight in with a Game Week 18 review. So we're just getting your team up first, Abdul. Mm-hmm. So you've had a good couple of game weeks, it has to be said. You were talking before we started recording about how this season it's been a very tough slog, but to be honest, this is the sort of stage of the season where I guess the engaged managers start to really find the kind of gains and really try and get up the ranks. So yeah, 82 points in Game Week 17 was really, really strong. And then you also had a really good game week in Game Week 18 as well. So just talk us through this. I mean, look, you've had Flecken, which is interesting. I've had Flecken, and he's a bit of a kind of pain now with him getting that injury in the Brighton game, but yeah, 82 points, rolling the transfer in Game Week 17, and then also in Game Week 18, another strong week with 67. So yeah, how do you think about your team at the moment? Because a couple of transfers went well for you this week, didn't it?
Yeah, so I managed to save the week before, after kind of a long time. I've just been kind of fixing up my team. So I finally got to a point last week where I was quite happy with it. And then obviously the Saka injury happened. I was planning on saving again. That gave me an opportunity to bring Trent Alexander-Arnold in, which I was again, quite happy about. Bought in Sad as well. So I think the team's fine. Obviously, another injury is going to probably force me into another transfer now because I've got Flecken and I've got Valdermussen, on the bench who I can play as a backup, but. Yeah, I think kind of looking at this game week, I was hoping to save again because I really want to start saving up transfers for Liverpool and Everton's double game week, which is likely going to be in 24 or 25. But yeah, I mean, look, I've had a good rise over the last couple of weeks. A slow rise, not like a rapid one. I'm still ranked outside the top 1 million. So hoping, yeah, as you said, this is this time of the season where the engaged managers should start profiting. So hopefully that happens.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a nice game week. I think the kind of average was quite kind of high in Game Week 17. I saw kind of quite a lot of big scores, and And yeah, very, very nice, 82 points. And also Game Week 18, 67 got you a lovely green arrow. And, talk about that defence, because Timber and Gabriel obviously came in clutch, didn't they, with that clean sheet in that game against Ipswich?
Yeah, and that was the difference between a red and a green. And really 6-7 points, I think, like higher up, if you're ranked like in the top 100k is like I'd say like a really small green, but where I'm ranked, it looks a lot better than it is. So I think it wasn't a bad game week. I think it was quite an average game week for me personally. But yeah, I mean, without that double clean sheet for Arsenal, I would have had a red, and very grateful that they kept that. And obviously Timber with the 3 bonus points was nice.
Yeah, as a fellow Timber owner, I was absolutely delighted by that. It was really, really key to squeezing through my own team with a green arrow. But yeah, Flecken obviously now injured ahead of Game Week 19 there, Chris. Do you think he is a priority sell, or would you say the way the goalkeepers have done this season, if you've got a backup, which some people do, 2 rotating goalkeepers is not the most popular thing, but would you just leave in Flecken, potentially, see if he is okay? Because there's not been a press conference prior to this Game Week 19 deadline from Thomas Frank. So, yeah, is that one you'd be looking to move on, or would you kind of keep him at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not a transfer you really want to be making on a goalkeeper, especially as Abdul said, with that kind of double game week for Liverpool looming. If you can bank up those transfers going ahead to that game week, whenever it will be, it could be very useful. I don't know whether Frank has shed any light on his time frame in terms of when he's returning, but it's never encouraging, is it, when a goalkeeper gets substituted? So, yeah, I mean, for you, Abdul, if you do have the sub-Brentford keeper in your squad, then I suppose that's kind of maybe a natural replacement potentially, and you can save a transfer. But again, we know Brentford haven't been very solid defensively all season. So, it could be kind of a perfect opportunity to kind of replace him with a bit of a different goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, Arsenal in Game Week 19 anyway, so it's maybe a good opportunity for those Flecken owners to just move on ahead of games against the likes of Man City and Liverpool. But it has been tough for Flecken this season, getting those clean sheets. But yeah, at least he's had attacking returns, I suppose. Trent Alexander-Arnold is an interesting point of discussion there, Abdul, because a lot of people have said he's not worth the value this season. He's not worth bringing into your team, but understandably, a lot of people moved him in Game Week 18 with that home fixture to Leicester. It looked very appetising, and obviously with how well he played in that Tottenham game, it felt like a nice move to make, especially with Saka being injured. That money could have been used for the kind of Trent money and potentially Isak as well. But do you think going forward, obviously that game against Leicester was a bit of a surprise to see them concede so early to that Ayew goal. Do you think going forward that maybe Trent will be that value that with the fixtures can deliver?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm happy with Trent there. I think he's one of those picks where you can just, you'd happily just play him every single game week. Such a reliable option in terms. I mean, look, he hasn't kind of hit the heights this season. He's only got like 4 assists so far, but he has got the highest, XGI. If you've got to look at his XGI numbers, like 4.5, highest amongst defenders. I mean, that's kind of on par with how midfielders kind of perform, in terms of their stats. So I think he's a great option. I think he's fine to hold it. I know the Leicester game was on paper, the perfect kind of entry point, as you just said. But as football, this happens. The second or third minute clean sheet wipeout. But I'm confident he'll get attacking returns and clean sheets over the next 10 to 12 game weeks up until the next double as well. Obviously, with the double game week coming up, it makes him even more attractive option. I think he's one of those picks where I'll just leave him in there until the next wild card unless he gets injured.
Yeah, he is a bit of a set and forget option, and hopefully he can offer a few more goals this season than he's shown at the start of the season, because it has been quite shy on that front. But yeah, he's always a player that can produce that big 15-point haul. The midfield then wasn't as much of a success, unfortunately, but the big boys did deliver with Salah and Palmer, and you went for Salah in the end for the captaincy. It's 1 point in it. It still felt a very logical move against Leicester. But Cole Palmer did very well. As a Chelsea fan, Chris, I bet that was exciting to see Palmer score so early. And those that did go for him on captaincy were probably licking their lips of a big haul. But the game ended up Fulham winning that one. So, yeah, what do you think about Palmer ahead of an appetising game against Ipswich? I think a lot of people are looking at that fixture and thinking maybe this could be the week we go against Salah, right?
Yeah, I think that fixture is very, like you say, very appetising. I assume he will start. I think Maresca said in his press conference that there will be some rotation, but I think he's probably one of the only players who's immune to that in the Chelsea starting 11. So, yeah, I think for me, he's probably the standout. I mean, West Ham away is not a bad fixture either for Salah, but surely you've got to back it, a player against a promoted team. So, yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, I was surprised that he outscored Salah this week, to be honest. And yeah, we'll have to see in the future game weeks. But I think Salah's really it's hard to go against him. But this coming game week with Ipswich away, it might be the only chance in the next few.
It is tempting, but I guess one thing we have to factor in, Abdul, is the injury to Fabianski. Areola will probably be back in goal for West Ham. So can you kind of create the narrative that we can go against Salah, or for your namesake, is it worth just trusting the big Egyptian king there?
Yeah, because look, I think it's a lot closer than people. Like if you look at like the captain polls this game week, right, you'll see Salah like miles ahead. I think, well, not miles, but I think it'll be quite convincing. Kind of majority of people going for Salah. I think so, a lot closer than that. And like Chris said, like Ipswich are like a much worse defence than West Ham. They've got like the second worst expected goals conceded in the league. Just after Southampton, I think they're the fourth most goals conceded. But the thing with Salah, I think the thing that is kind of drawing people towards Salah, despite Palmer having the better fixture, is he's just been so insanely good. Like his returns this season have just been phenomenal. Like he's on course to break his like record-breaking season of, I think it was 303 points, was it? He's got 16 goals, 11 assists already. So I think that's where the conundrum is. Like, yeah, Palmer's got the better fixture, but Mo Salah's Mo Salah. So it's tough. But I mean, at the moment, my captaincy is on Salah, the vice is on Palmer. But I think it's a good week to kind of take that risk as well, because I think when it's so close, I think sometimes in these situations, like you can go for the lower owned option like Palmer, who I think is going to be by far lower captain than him. I think it's a good opportunity for those kind of maverick managers, like yourself, Roberto, who want to kind of make those gains. I think it's a good week to do it.
Yeah, it's very tempting. It's just I try and think of all the reasons to not captain Salah, and there are very few at the moment, so it's really tough. But I can see the temptation there as well, there, Chris. So yeah, it's a fair argument. The midfield there, you've got there Sarr, obviously blanked in that Bournemouth game, but he previously scored against Arsenal, and Bumo also blanked against Brighton. Semenyo blanked. It was a bit of a blanking week, really, for the midfielders, Chris. Yeah. A lot of people, that replaced Saka didn't get any points unless you brought in Gordon or Bowen. So it was a tough week for a lot of those midfielders, but Ismaila Sarr is going to be a big conversation around kind of Crystal Palace options going forward, Chris. And those fixtures look really tempting, don't they? So would you think Sarr is one of the best potential, midfield transfers ahead of Gameweek 19?
Yeah, I really like it. I think that going forward, the next kind of 5 fixtures, they've got a tough fixture Gameweek 20, but yeah, I think he's a great option, and he's just a nice little like kind of inroad into the Palace forward line. And with Southampton at home, you really can't go wrong as a fixture there as kind of an entry point. So yeah, I really like him as an asset, to be honest.
He does feel like one of those better, cheaper options, but the cheap options this year have been so great, so it's almost made us more likely to bench a lot of our players with points. And Semenyo has been one of those confusing assets, I think, Abdul. I don't know what you think about him, because he's had so many shots recently, and a lot of people said, oh well, it's been one return in 9 game weeks. A lot of people sold ahead of that Man United game, me being one included, and that was painful when my replacement for him, Ahmad, also blanked in the same game. But then he obviously blanks as well in that game against Crystal Palace. So do you think going forward that we can get rid of Semenyo now? Is it time for us to kind of jump ship there?
I mean, look, he is a frustrating asset to own. Like I've benched him for his last 2 goals. I benched him against City and I benched him against Man United. But look, he's 5.6 million, so it's one of those where you kind of expect that from that level of player, like at that price point. Yeah, he's been frustrating and maybe like not as good as the other options, like Rodgers and even Enzo, who's like chipping in with assists here and there as well. He is a confusing asset, as you said, because he's the most nailed for minutes, I think, out of those guys. Like to play like the full 90. He does play the full 90 in majority of games. I think if you can move him up to like if you got money in the bank, because we're all going to have money in the bank now with Saka, transferring Saka, and a lot of guys will probably be transferring Bruno up this week as well. So if you can get him up to like a Gordon or I guess an Odegaard or a Martinelli, then yeah, I think you can possibly do that. I think he would be, if you've got like myself, if you've got like a Semenyo and a Rodgers, I'd probably remove Semenyo instead. But at the same time, I don't think he's an urgent transfer out. I think he's fine still at 5.6 million. I think he'll probably get a return maybe every 3 to 5 games, which is fine. The next pictures are, I think, Fulham stuff, but they've got Everton and then they've got Forest at home in 23. So I guess you can probably wait a few weeks if you are looking at transfer him out. I don't think he's urgent transfer.
Yeah, it does feel like one of those players, Chris, where he's like, if you own him at the moment, you could potentially keep if you have other fires in your team to sort out, but he's probably not a buy at the same time. It's that sort of territory, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's one to kind of hold fire on if you do own him currently. As we saw, I benched him against United, so I also felt the pain of not having him in the starting lineup. But yeah, I think he's just he's like you guys have said, he's just a very kind of weird returner. He kind of gets his returns in bigger games, it seems, as well. So maybe it's not wise to kind of base his kind of selections based on the fixtures he's got. I don't know, but yeah, he's a bit of a frustrating asset. But I think I'm going to keep him for now.
Yeah, it makes sense. The front two there with Isak and Pedro, that's interesting with Pedro because we talked about him last week on the pod and how Brighton's fixtures still look good. Maybe Pedro's still one of the better assets to own at that sort of price, but he just didn't look good at all in that game against Brentford, and potentially got lucky to not get sent off. So, do you think, Abdul, that Pedro is going to be staying in your team and you're going to wait a bit more, or is it one you're just going to want to get rid now?
Yeah, look, similar to Semenyo, he's 5.8 million. He's not high on my priority list. Yeah, look, it's frustrating him, blank in the last 4 games. He's only had like 1 assist since I bought him in. After he's had a great start from when he came back from injury. But again, it's like who do you go to? Like he's 5.8. If you want to move to like somebody in the same price category, there's like I think Strand Larson probably the only one you could actually go for really. So you'd have to move up. And you need a lot of money to go to like the Jackson or Isak or even like Solanke if you want to go there. So I think he's fine. Look, I think he's still great value. His returns haven't been ideal, but I think I'm just going to hold him, because the next few games, Aston Villa away is tough. The Arsenal game is tough. I think that's the game that you think, okay, if you are going to sell or move them up to another price category, then this is probably the week to do it. But then they've got Ipswich, Man United, and Everton, which are not too bad. So I'm mostly due to his price point and the fact that he's on penalties, to give him up till Gameweek 23 at least.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. He is just that asset that's frustratingly, he's so potentially good in future weeks because he's on penalties and he is playing in a great attacking team, but it's been Brighton's form which I think has been so concerning in recent weeks. So I can understand the kind of arguments for both keeping and for selling. But thanks to those that have joined in the live chat. It's been great to see FPL have a beer, Gary. So thanks for coming in. Alf PL as well. Thanks for joining. And also Mass. He's got a question this week. He's actually on wildcard ahead of Gameweek 19. That's an important point to make because Gameweek 19 deadline is the last time you can use that first wildcard. So yeah, interesting stuff. He's got draft of Pickford and Fabianski as the 2 goalkeepers. And obviously Fabianski, Chris, he got injured in that West Ham game. So if you were picking 2 goalkeepers on a wild card, who do you think you'd go for?
I think I'd go Pickford definitely as first choice. And then, to be honest, as with Brentford's kind of goalkeeping situation, I think Valdemarson is a good kind of second choice. And yeah, if for whatever reason Pickford doesn't start or picks up an injury or whatever, then he's there to kind of mop up those points. So yeah, I definitely go with Pickford. I think in terms of value for money, he's definitely kind of proving what a good asset he can be. So yeah, I think those two would probably be my choice.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, Abdul, how Everton just seem to be defying the odds. I mean, successive draws against Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man City, and yet the fixtures are always terrible, so we never get that convinced to bring in an Everton defender, but I don't know how they've done it, right? It's been incredible. Do you think maybe we should just swallow our pride and get in an Everton defender at this point, Abdul?
Well, I think look, first of all, if you look at the expected goals conceded, right, they're top six, right. So like Everton have always been like, especially under Dyche, have been like a solid defensive team. It's the goals which have been the kind of issue with them. So right now, I think they're with the double game week coming up as well. I think they're fine investments, and I agree with Chris that if you were on a wild card this week, then Pickford is a great kind of goalkeeper choice to go for. Mikalenko at 4.3 million is a good option as well. Now you can have him as your fourth or fifth defender, just simply for that double game week. But look, but saying that, their fixtures at the moment aren't the best. I think then let me just check. So next they've got Forest at home, I guess is okay. Bournemouth away, Villa, Spurs, then Brighton. But then, from Leicester at home in 24, that's where it gets kind of interesting, because that's where the potential double game week is, 24, 25. I think, you could possibly wait until then to invest in one of the defenders anyway. But I think right now, if you were to go for one, Pickford would be my top choice. But yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm obviously surprised with Everton keeping clean sheets against, the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal, but like before that, they got a clean sheet against Wales, against Brentford, against West Ham. Those weren't surprising to me because they've always been a kind of solid defensive team.
Yeah, no, it is kind of an impressive record that Dyche has got, and he seems to be doing it every season somehow. Whether or not Everton are safely, in mid-table, or in some seasons they've just about scraped survival, but they've still been a stubborn defensive unit. So yeah, really interesting, and yeah, you got Mikalenko there on your bench as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many points he gets in coming weeks. But the rest of your team, Valdemarson on the bench, obviously Flecken at least outscored him despite going off injured. I mean, it was a crazy game, that Brighton one. And then Strand Larson blanks, and then Colwill with a interesting assist. I don't think many people would have expected that from him, because he's been the kind of nailed Chelsea defender, but not with a match attacking threat. So it's definitely interesting, that one.
He almost scored as well. Just, I think he was a bit offside, but like he was up there in the box. So yeah, it's good to see that as an owner.
Definitely. Now, really good week for you, Abdul. Mass has also asked about kind of if you were on a wild card, your potential picks you'd go for. And I think Trent, Gabriel, Munoz, Anderson, they all look great defensive picks, because Fulham as a defence have been really solid. Salah, Foden is an interesting one. I'm sure we'll get onto that when we talk about Man City in a bit more, because Haaland with that penalty miss, 0-pointer, it's just incredible how poor they've been. But I think Foden's interesting, obviously, with City's fixtures. He's a bit cheaper than your other City options, like a De Bruyne, who's not necessarily started all the games, and he's a bit cheaper, but ahead of Leicester. It's just so hard to have any faith in Man City at the moment. So I'd maybe change someone different to Foden. In that front three that Mass is looking at, Chris, he's got Isak, Wood, and Pedro. Would you change anyone from that front three, or do you think that's a good kind of options to go with?
Well, Isak, is kind of a no-brainer at the moment. He's probably the informed striker in the league. So yeah, I like that. Do you say Wood as well?
Yeah, Chris Wood
as well. It's hard to go against this season. He's just been so consistent, and that seems to have kind of dropped off a little bit in the last couple of weeks. But I think it would be hard to go against him. But maybe on a wild card, there are better options. Crystal Palace, as we've talked about, their kind of fixtures are turning. So a Mateta potentially might be an option. But yeah, it's a bit of a rogue shout, that one, because Palace haven't been great themselves this year, really. But there's players like Jimenez as well, I suppose. But then you see with Muniz coming in and chipping in with a couple of goals, I don't think he's nailed on to start every week. So, yeah, I think Wood's probably a safer choice out of him. And then obviously you've got Mateus Cunha, who's really on fire at the moment. But then Wolves' fixtures are starting to turn as well. So,
And you've got the ban, I suppose, as well, that could come in at any point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I quite like that front three. I think, as Abdul said, João Pedro is a good option and is maybe one who over the next 3 or 4 weeks can really profit and then maybe look to move him on. So, yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mass has asked that question, Abdul, if he's got either Foden or Wood or Gordon and Watkins. Who would you pick on that kind of two options out of those two?
First of all, I would throw in Jackson there as one of your. I think if you're on a wild card, I think instead of Wood, I'd probably if you could stretch to that. I think my top three would be Isaac, Jackson, and João Pedro, mostly due to Pedro's price. Firstly, but Foden and Wood versus Gordon and Watkins is a really tough one because, I mean, I would go Gordon and Watkins because I think Gordon's more at the moment more reliable than Foden, costs less. I just think with Foden, he has got the potential to do great, but City just look like, nowhere near the force they have been in previous seasons. And he's only scored 1 goal so far this season, so he's not really got anything to back up apart from his, last season's form. And Watkins for the next two looks amazing because, as we know, like Villa's appeal for Duran's red card has been turned down, so he's going to miss the next 2 league games. I think one of his 3 games is going to be served in the FA Cup. So, yeah, that looks really tempting. The only thing with Watkins, I would say, though, is that he's likely going to be a problem again when Duran's back.
Yeah.
In terms of his starting berth, because he was benched in the last 4 games, before Duran got sent off. So he's definitely going to start the next 2 now. But I think once Duran's back, then potential problem. But saying that, those next 2 games for Villa look great. So, yeah, I think that's, it's a good point to take.
Yeah, 100%. It could be very exciting. Some of these strikers we're going to want to get to. This is why I think we need to kind of save transfers because they're quite expensive forwards that we want to bring in. Players like Isak, players like Jackson, and even a risk on someone like a Watkins or a Solanke could be really good plays in the coming weeks with the way the fixtures are looking. So, yeah, it definitely makes sense with the money we can get from the likes of Saka and maybe even Haaland if, I don't know if you'd still have Haaland if you'd sell him, but you probably would, but it's just so hard at the moment with City's fixtures, but their form is just not there at the moment. But my game week 18, I had a nice game week. I have to say, game week 17 was a lot more positive though, because it got 75 points, and on the kind of surface of that, you'd think, oh, that must have been a green arrow. But as we were discussing earlier, game week 17 was really high scoring. And yeah, I saw a lot of like 80s, 90s, triple digits in game week 17. Meanwhile, I was sat here with 75, and it was a really painful red arrow. And it was painful because, I just kind of had a benching problem in game week 17. So I benched both Rodgers with his 14-point haul against Man City and Semedo against Leicester, which looked logical at the time. Wolves have been conceding goals for fun, and we didn't quite know how, Vitor Pereira, how quickly that manager bounce would come in. But of course, it's typical, isn't it, Chris, that the first attacking return Semedo gets whilst being in my team is when I benched him. It's just like, it's crazy, isn't it?
Stars, isn't it? It's meant to be. Yeah, no, that's very unfortunate. And couple that with the clean sheet as well. I mean, it's a bit of a double whammy there. But looking at your defence, I can obviously see the rationale behind him being the one that you benched. So, yeah, it's a frustrating one, but in Rodgers as well, even though City have been in poor form, on the face of it, he probably had the worst fixtures out of your midfielders. So, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I made the 1 free transfer of Ahmad in for Semenyo, and that was painful as well because Semenyo scores and Ahmad doesn't do anything. And I just look at my team and I'm like, why have I got Man United in there all of a sudden? Because I just thought ahead of the nice fixtures for them. They've got some trickier ones now, but I'm just going to hold out Ahmad probably for that Southampton game and just reassess then and hope that in that time Ahmad can kind of reappear on sort of form. But yeah, frustrating one for sure. Flecken obviously, as no surprise, conceded in that game week 17 fixture. Hall was a nice bonus point as well. That was a late bonus, I think, that was added at the end. So very, very happy with that. Also, we had Palmer and Jackson disappointing in that game where you'd expect them to have done a bit more against Everton. But Chris, are you surprised that that game was as kind of lack of kind of clear-cut chances as it was?
To be honest, no, because at Chelsea, at Everton, the last few years, it's been a bit of a struggle. It's been a bit of a bogey ground. And as we spoke about already, Everton are quite a solid defensive unit. So, yeah, I think it was always kind of looked like it was going to be a tough fixture. And that's why I went for Salah that week. Obviously, Spurs were in kind of defensive disarray with the amount of players they're missing. Yeah, obviously Everton at home is always a tricky game. Everton away, sorry, is always a tricky game. So, yeah, disappointing that he couldn't get any sort of return in that one, but at least he got something against Fulham.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, Jackson has been a pretty painful one for me, Abdul, since I made the switch in game week 14 of Isak to Jackson ahead of that Liverpool game for Newcastle where Isak was, injury rumoured to be out and Jackson had Southampton and it all looked so great. And in that time, Jackson just scored one goal against Brentford and Isak just went absolutely crazy. So I ended up making the move in game week 18 of bringing in Isak. The thing that's painful about it is that it was for Cunha because I thought, well, this band's got to come in eventually and, Wolves fixtures are getting worse. But this is the week that Cunha decides to get a goal and assist. Isak did get a goal, but it's just a very frustrating thing this season. I've struggled to time my transfers the right week, and in the end, it ends up being okay. The kind of week after, the points will come back and it will balance out again. But it has been, I think, quite a difficult season, Abdul, for making those transfers that look logical on paper, and then the kind of immediate results don't seem to be coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of FPL in a nutshell. But I think this season more than ever, we have seen some huge swings, like the Cunha points since game week 6 have been phenomenal. He's been he's got 10 goals from an XG of 4. The overall performance has been huge, right? And I think a lot of people were in your shoes this week. I think a lot of people done Cunha to Isak because that was the kind of only route, because it makes sense, right? Because you've got Jackson there, you've got Wood, other guys probably got Solanke, and you're thinking Cunha's surely going to get banned soon, so this is a week to do it. Okay, Man United at home, it's not a hard fixture, but it's not a plum fixture, right? And then obviously they went down to 10 men, so that was quite unlucky for you. But yeah, it's just been one of those seasons, and I think honestly that move was probably a good one on paper. One of those where it's a good move, just not a good outcome.
Yeah, I guess that's how we have to kind of play FPL, that trust in the kind of reasoning to get to that decision. But sometimes the results won't always kind of go the way that we think they will, probably long term. So it's about sticking it out this season. But yeah, all in all, it was a pretty depressing game week 17, to be honest, because I kind of dropped quite badly. But luckily, Cunha just kind of still kept delivering in that Leicester game. It's ridiculous, his form this season. And Salah with the captaincy, 42 points was lovely. It was a bit more positive, though, in game week 18, because for me this week, Chris, the safety score, it was 64 points, and I got 64 points. I mean, I genuinely can't remember a time where I've been more fine margins, basically by the skin of my teeth getting a green arrow, because I think I was on a red going into the kind of Friday night games of the Ipswich game at Arsenal and obviously Brighton playing Brentford. And when I saw that Flecken, I looked at that Brighton score. I hadn't seen what the kind of substitutions were. I saw that 0-0 and I was like, yes, finally Flecken. And then I checked the kind of lineups and see that he gets subbed off on 36 minutes. It was a tough moment.
That's painful.
It was so painful. And then, I was just looking at that Arsenal game thinking, right, I haven't got any Arsenal attackers. I've sold Saka, already for this game week 18. I brought in a man that really did make a lot of sense. And it was Mr. Hang on. I'm trying to think now who it actually was. No, sorry. I did bring in Diaz. That was it. So Diaz was my Saka replacement. And people will say, oh, that's a bad move because his X minutes was a risk ahead of, Liverpool's, high congested fixtures. But I just thought long term, I want Liverpool attack alongside Salah, and so I thought the minutes were potentially better for Jota. Maybe in that Leicester game, but long term, I thought Diaz would have better minutes. Turned out that Jota also was benched as well as Diaz, and then Jota gets the minutes off the bench in that game, and Diaz gets nothing, which in the end was okay for me because Rodgers' 2 points that came on for Diaz was that kind of extra 2 points to get me that 64 and get me that safety score. So it's incredible, really. I've just about shaved into that green arrow. The defence, obviously, Flecken was a nightmare, but hopefully going forward, Trent can kind of show that value as we were talking about earlier. Now, what about
Diaz as well?
Sorry, what was that, Abdul?
Sorry to cut you off there. I thought
that's all right.
I was saying with Diaz, he apparently his dad was ill, wasn't feeling well, so that's why he didn't start and didn't get any minutes.
Okay.
So I think he got really unlucky there.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. That's helpful insight. I think it does probably mean Diaz will start the West Ham game now, and as I said, it was more of a long-term move, that Diaz transfer, so hopefully that will pay off. But yeah, I mean, my other 2 transfers I made, I had 3 free transfers saved up, so I did that move for Saka. I also then did, as I earlier discussed, Isak back in, which was nice to kind of get his goal, but for Cunha this week it was a net kind of loss really of those 12 points from Cunha. And then I also did make another change where I thought Trent was just so exciting ahead of that Leicester game, so I brought him in for Porro, and it worked out because Porro in the end got benched in that game, so quite pleased that I don't have him anymore going forward. But do you think that blank for Rodgers in a game where, Newcastle, maybe you might have fancied them, Chris, against that Newcastle defence, do you think Villa and Rodgers, do you think with these fixtures now is going to get back in a bit more consistency? Because he's been great at certain game weeks, but other game weeks he's been quite underwhelming, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's definitely a hold, and as we spoke about earlier, for players at that price point, he is just immaculate value for money. So yeah, I think he's one to stay patient with, and he can, as he showed against Man City, deliver that really explosive haul. So yeah, I mean, when Brighton coming up, they've not been in the best form, as you said earlier, Roberto. So I can see him scoring in that game, and with Duran the suspension as well, I think his minutes are more safe in the next couple of weeks, certainly. So yeah, let's hope he does get a return. But I saw an interesting stat about Rodgers that he has all his returns this season. Well, the majority of his returns this season have been when he's had a full week free. So when he's had midweek games, he's kind of struggled in the Premier League games at the weekend to make an impact. So yeah, I think with the congested fixture list, it does have a bit of an impact on the impact he can have on games, because he is quite an effervescent player, isn't he? He needs kind of to be fully at it to play at his best. So yeah, but I think, as Abdul said, he's at the price point he's at, you can't really look anywhere else for a Villa player. So I think he's still a good option.
Yeah, I still think he's probably the best way into that Villa attack with, the kind of doubts around Duran and Watkins and that sort of thing. The other forwards I had there, Wood and Jackson, Abdul, they both blanked, and it's a surprisingly third blank in a row for Chris Wood. Is he someone that you think might be able to be moved on now? Because the Forest fixtures aren't great, but he also is playing for one of the best teams in the league at the moment, Forest. So is it worth just maybe keeping faith with him?
I think so. Look, I think with Wood, he was overperforming. He was basically scoring with his one shot on goal. Now that's not really happening. However, saying that, I still think he's a good option. Forest are a good team, but they don't score many. But he seems to be their kind of. He's that player which he's the talisman, right? If when Forest score, the first name that you think is going to be is Chris Wood, and a lot of the time it is. So I think he's fine to keep. I think, look, if you look at the next 4, they've got Everton, Wolves, Liverpool and Southampton. 3 of those are good fixtures. So I think you hold for that Southampton game at the very least, and then kind of reassess. I still think he's a great option because he's nailed to start. He usually gets the majority, at least kind of 75 plus minutes, and he's on penalties as well. And I think right now, in that price point. I mean, if you look at the forwards in general, it's only really Isaac who's performing. So,
Yeah.
like, who do you move him on to, really?
It is tough.
Yeah. And I think, for some guys, I think they'll be looking to buy Wood in the next few weeks as well, for that Southampton game, when we're getting rid of the likes of, when Cunha's banned, finally. I don't know when his ban's going to come, but when it does finally come, I think he'll be one of the contenders that they look at.
Yeah, it's interesting there, Chris. I mean, Abdul did say that the Wood is nailed, and I do agree with that, like 99% at the time. But it's interesting with this kind of game, quick turnaround against Everton, where maybe Forest will think maybe our knee could start that. Do you think there's a chance of that Wood getting rested, and also kind of the same sort of conversation around Jackson, because Nkunku obviously came off, with some big points when earlier on Jackson got rested against Southampton. So do you think there could be a rest for those two strikers there?
Yeah, I think always at this time of the year, there's always kind of that vulnerability to a benching. Out of the two, I'd be more worried about Jackson, probably. I think Nkunku is... I think he may start against Ipswich. Maresca's already said that he's going to make a few changes, not like the Conference League, like 11, like full squad, but yeah, I think if there are players to come in, I think Nkunku is probably going to be one of them. And the only position I can see him replacing is possibly Jackson, because Palmer's not going to be benched. So, it's a tricky one. And obviously, Nkunku did well against Southampton in the game he did come in for in the Premier League a few weeks ago. So, yeah. But I know what you're saying about Wood as well, because they've got a competent option there in our knee. So it's such a tricky one at this time of the year. But I think you just kind of got to take it as it comes, really. If they do get benched, then you've just not got to get too demoralised, I guess, because usually more often than not, they're going to be the first choice. So, it's difficult.
You kind of have to stomach it, I guess. You have to stomach the painful benchings in these odd weeks, because around those weeks where it's the regular game weeks, they'll get the big points. So if you then got kind of very trigger happy and started making transfers, then you could be selling players that can score points in the long run. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'll probably factor that in, and I might be benching Jackson this week then, just hoping that it's not another situation where he comes on for a 1-pointer, and I won't want to start that, but we'll have to see when we talk about our transfers. But yeah, the rest of the bench was, again, points on the bench, but I don't think I could have really justified playing both Hall or Semedo this week. Semedo I didn't think would get a clean sheet against Man United, and then the same thing goes for Lewis Hall, which was a good clean sheet for them against Villa. And Newcastle have got quite a few clean sheets on the bounce now, so yeah, it makes it interesting with those goalkeeper options to replace the likes of Fleck, and maybe Dubravka could be an option. You've got Flecken as well there, Abdul. So who are you looking to kind of replace? I see that there's a lot of options there around that kind of same price, but Zubin has asked that. Who are you looking at the moment?
Yeah, so Flecken's an issue because I was planning on saving this week, but what I'm thinking right now is either I save and go with Valdemirson for the next two, because Brentford have got Southampton after Arsenal, or I'm looking at possibly Alisson or Pickford, possibly even Henderson, because Palace's fixtures are really good as well. So that's kind of on my mind at the moment. And the reason I'm going for Pickford over Alisson, I think that's the closest call, is because if I do plan to play my assistant managership in Gameweek 24-25, then I want a Liverpool spot open, because obviously we know that with the assistant managership, it counts towards your 3-player limit.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. So Alisson, Pickford, and Henderson are the ones I'm looking at.
That's interesting. My Flecken replacement, I'm probably going to make a transfer live on stream, to be honest, because it's exciting. But also it's the deadline's tomorrow, so you can kind of get away with it. I'll probably be looking at, just because of the amount of money I've got in the bank, I haven't got loads, and I can't really stretch to too many other options. I've got 0.1 in the bank. I didn't expect to have to make this Flecken transfer, but it looks like I will have to, because I've got Bender as a 4.0 Fulham goalkeeper that's just not going to play. So yeah, I'm probably looking at Henderson. What do you think about Henderson? Obviously, you mentioned there Abdul, but Palace this season defensively, Chris, have been pretty poor, but their fixtures now are really good. So can you understand that Henderson maybe could be a good option these next few weeks?
Yeah, and I think their kind of defensive numbers have started to improve slowly but surely over the last few weeks. So Yeah, I think it's a good option, and he's so cheap as well, and he does get quite a few save points, even if he doesn't get those clean sheets. So I think it's a good option. I think, like Abdul said, there's plenty that you could choose from, but in terms of fixtures, there's not really many other teams that have better fixtures in the next 5 or 6. So I can see definitely the rationale behind it.
Yeah, I just wish I had point 0.3 in the bank, because then I could potentially stretch up to someone like a Matt Sells, who I rate a lot higher than Palace defensively. But yeah, I just don't quite have enough money there. So I'll probably be getting Henderson in, and I'll probably just lock it in now, to be honest. I don't see any reason not to, because yeah, Flecken is just, even if he is fit, and you mentioned he's got Southampton soon, Abdul, but I still think maybe the way Brentford are defending this season, they could concede in that Southampton game potentially. We'll have to see, but it's just been a painful own this season, Flecken. So I think making that transfer just does maybe set me up for some nice games. And obviously there are some tricky fixtures in there for Palace as well, but at least I know that Henderson has got a big upside game this week, and I can just leave him in until I wildcard with that second wildcard probably. Great stuff. Transfer made live. Yeah. Transfer made live, which is the first time that's ever happened on the Forms Temporary. So, yeah, hopefully that doesn't curse us. But in terms of how we're looking then, in terms of lining up for Gameweek 19, before we get into our differentials, at the minute I've got Henderson in goal, Trent, Gabriel, Timber, and I've currently got Hall starting, which we'll get on to talk about with Ahmad, because I'm a bit concerned about where Ahmad plays. I mean, some people have said with Bruno out, he could play as 10, but also is his minutes at risk? I'm not quite sure. I'm really struggling to kind of figure out Amarin at the moment. So at the moment, I've got Hall starting, so I think Hall could get a clean sheet there, the way United are playing. Luis Diaz, Salah on the captaincy, Rodgers against Brighton, and then Palmer. And then up front, Wood, hoping he starts against Everton, and then Isak with a bench of Jackson, Ahmad, and Semedo. Are there any sort of benching dilemmas you would pick out here, Abdul? Do you think there's any kind of changes you would make here? Because Jackson could well start in that Ipswich game, but it does feel like a bit of a tricky one, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would 100% play one of Jackson or Ahmad over Hall. That might come back to bite me, but I just think Newcastle, are probably going to concede against Man United as poor as they have been. United, but yeah, I mean, I think you've got to go with the upside here. I think Jackson and Ahmad have both got a higher upside than Hall. They're both attackers. And I do feel your kind of fear with Jackson there, and I really agree with what Chris was saying earlier. I think this very possibly is a game in which Jackson could get benched, because Maresca's done it before. I think it was against Southampton where he got benched in the last game, Jackson, which was the last Plum game. So, but if Jackson ends up starting that game and you've got Hall starting over him, you're going to feel like, you shouldn't have done that. So, yeah, I mean, like, look, with the rotations, we can't really do much about that. And there's no point, transferring these players out, because, they might get rotated in one game. You just got to kind of take it on the chin. And I think situations like this is go for the upside. I'd start Jackson. I mean, if you're really kind of confident Jackson will get benched, then I'd probably still go with Ahmad over Hall, because I don't see him being rested.
Yeah, I think maybe it's the previous scarring of that Hall game against Leicester, where I'm like, if I bench Hall again, he'll probably just do it to me again. But I think I probably will start Jackson. It's interesting with Ahmad, because I do really like him this week. It's just whether or not he gets those minutes, and it's hard to know with Bruno not in the team. Does Ahmad kind of play a different position? Maybe what do you think about that one, Chris?
I think the fact that Fernandes isn't playing boosts the chances that he will start. What position he starts is, again, up to question, because we've seen him play wing back, attacking midfielder. So, yeah, it's always a difficult, like you said, Roberto, very difficult to kind of second guess Amarim. I think he's obviously trialing out a lot of players, just trying to see who is his best 11. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. Because Bruno is not available, I would kind of be more into the side that he will be playing Ahmad. But yeah, again, it is another one where you're susceptible to a benching. But yeah, like you said, Abdul, the upside of a Jackson, if he doesn't start, then it's disappointing. But in a way, if you do start him and he does play, he's got a fantastic fixture against a pretty poor defence. So yeah, it might not be worth the risk of putting him on the bench. So yeah, I think that lineup you have there is probably the way to go, really. But Ahmad is a difficult one. I hope he doesn't punish you, but it's a good fixture, and yeah, he's probably going to start. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, well, with my track record of benchings these last kind of 10 or so game weeks, it's, bound to hit me again, but we'll have to see. Hopefully not in game week 19. Of course, you had a really good couple of weeks, Chris. I have to say, just shout out to you, because you've been smashing it, not just in the former temporary head-to-head league, but also in the game overall. I mean, your rank is just incredible, and 106 points for you in game week 17 was just, I looked at that, I was like, right, is this guy like looking at this and getting the lottery tickets? Like, what's going on? So you rolled a transfer, you had 106. I mean, it's just a flex at this point. Milenkovic and Robinson with clean sheets for you. Salah obviously with the 42 on the captaincy. And you, of course, had Isak for his hat-trick. So I bet you were delighted with that one.
Yeah, no, very pleased. I think that's the first time I've ever got a triple figure haul. So yeah, no, I was very pleased with that. Where to start? I mean, obviously Salah with his one man show against Spurs, as it turned out. I mean, for everyone really, it was a great asset to own against Tottenham. So yeah, no, brilliant 42 points on captaincy. And yeah, as you say, Isak had a fantastic haul against Ipswich. I did kind of waver on the captaincy. I did kind of think about a differential captaincy with going Isak against Ipswich. So there is a kind of what could have been if I had, but again, Salah outscored him, so it's not the end of the world. So yeah, no, it's a brilliant return from him, and he's really shown some consistency now. I owned him right at the start of the season, which I think a lot of people did as well. And he kind of flattered to deceive a bit. He got a couple of returns here and there, but I think as Newcastle's form is starting to improve, you're seeing that his form is really kind of going on an upward trajectory. So, no, I was definitely pleased with that. And elsewhere, obviously, Milenkovic has been an absolutely brilliant kind of player to own the last 4 game weeks. I think he's returned in all of them. So, yeah. I've had him since I wildcarded in game week 10. I'd waited patiently for that kind of attacking return, because he had threatened it. He's obviously a huge man, and he really is a threat at set pieces. So yeah, it's been brilliant owning him. And with Forest defensively, I see no reason to kind of look to move him on. He's just a fantastic kind of 4-4. Well, at the moment he's starting most weeks for me, but that rotation between him and Robinson most weeks has been quite useful for me. And obviously a lot of people moved on to Robinson against Southampton. But yeah, he's just a fantastic. I think he's the best left back in the league. So he's been a player that I've really kind of I've had him since the start, actually, since game week 1. So he's been a player that I've been happy to hold since then. And yeah, elsewhere, obviously, I had Semenyo on the bench, which was a bit frustrating. But because it was going to be a toss-up between him and Rodgers, so having Rodgers get that 14-point haul it made up for it in a way. And yeah, no, it was just a very good game week all in all. I was very pleased with it.
Incredible stuff. I mean, yeah, Wissa's interesting. You've owned him for a while as well. And heading into game week 18, you kept the faith with him in that Brentford game. And obviously, yeah, Brentford, they have been this team where they just sometimes look amazing. And then when they play away from home, Abdul, they just can't seem to do anything. So a blank for Wissa against Brighton. But do you still think he's one you'd keep if you owned Johan Wissa?
I think with Wissa, I think I'd be looking to probably offload him just because of the fixtures. I think Mbeumo is in a different situation where I think he's nailed to start, nailed to play 90 minutes, and he's on penalties. And there's very few attackers in the league who have got that. With Wissa, he's a good option. He plays as a forward for Brentford, but he's not got penalties, and he's not. He's not nailed to play 90 minutes every game. So yeah, I think for me, if I had Wissa, he would be on the chopping block, because those fixtures coming for Brentford are quite tough.
They are, but yeah, I mean, 2 transfers for you this game week. Trent was one of them there, Chris, and then obviously the other one being a logical one in Kulusevski, because the way his form has been recently has been superb. But as we said earlier, all the Saka replacements seem to have blanked. So it was one of those weird weeks. But yeah, amazing week for you still. 75 points. Great game week 18. And that's 6 green arrows in a row for you now, Chris. I mean, just someone stop you. Like, it's getting to that stage now. You're just getting too good. So fair play. Is there any else kind of you wanted to talk about for your game week 18, or is that everything?
Well, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it. We've talked about Trent, haven't we? And kind of his underlying data looks quite promising. I listened to a really good podcast by FPL Raptor about Trent, and he was saying that his data is actually quite comparable with when he was getting those massive returns in 2019-20 in terms of XG, XGA. So yeah, I as you saw in game week 17, I did own Robertson, so I did have a Liverpool defender, but I wanted a Liverpool defender with a bit more attacking threat. And yeah, Robertson was a frustrating one, because I think in previous seasons we have seen him as kind of a marauding fullback who can get those kind of assists, but it seems under Slot he's a bit more reserved. And obviously you've got the competition with Simicast when he returns. So I was a bit nervous about kind of him being my starting one of my starting defenders. And as you saw in game week 17, I went for Milenkovic and Robinson. So I didn't have a great deal of faith in him. So it was basically a choice between him and Van Dijk. And yeah, I just thought Trent has probably got the bigger upside. So we've gone for him. But it's going to be a difficult one to see whether he does kind of prove his value for money in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, give him a couple more weeks, I think, and then see how he does, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible stuff this season, Chris. You're smashing it. 11k. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And now we're going to get on to talk about some of the players that maybe could just get you a bit higher up the ranks and make that rank difference. Really interesting. Last week we got on Boona and also we got Kanji FPL. And we actually each got, all three of us, 2 returns from 3, which was quite more successful than in previous weeks, to be honest. But I had Iwobi in those 2 game weeks in 17 and 18. He blanked in both. Bernardo Silva, though, did come through with a nice goal against Everton. And Gibbs White as well with an assist in game week 18. Kanji went for Gakpo and Bowen, which were 2 really nice shouts. And both of those returned. Erdegaard frustrating yet again. Jota was benched, of course, for Boona, so that was a shame, and didn't get any returns those 2 weeks. And then Gordon as well, alongside Bowen, a couple of returns there. So it's interesting, Abdul. We have this table of differentials points across the season and the guests that have come on. And at the moment, Chris, I hate to say, because you didn't come on last week, I've sneaked into top place with 10 points. 10 points, followed by Chris with 9 points, and then everyone else is kind of on 3, 2, 1. So it's been interesting. Let's see how you can do, Abdul, to kind of get yourself up the leaderboard. But yeah, what's your first differential this game week where you're looking at under 10% owned that you think could do well in game week 19 then?
Yeah, for me, I think by far my first pick is Eze. I think he's going to be, he had a poor start to the season, but Palace were poor as well. And he's had those injuries, he's been kind of back and forth with these niggling injuries, and he played 87 minutes in the last game week. And to me, watching him, he seemed a lot better than he's been this season. Like, he seemed to be kind of fully fit. Just saying that, I don't want to jinx him. He might probably get injured the next game, but he seems to be at that level again, that kind of last season from the last game against Bournemouth. So I just think with that entry point this week with Southampton and Palace's kind of long-term fixtures, I think he's a great option. Yeah,
I really like Eze as a pick. Do you think he is going to be the one, Chris, that returns over the likes of Salah, who's a little bit cheaper, just because Eze is on those set pieces, and obviously he's got the history of performance for Palace, even though it's not quite been there this season compared to the likes of Salah, who's been in great form?
Yeah, well, that's funny. I may as well reveal one of my differentials, because I went for Salah as mine, because I think it's obviously a very close call, and probably Eze, as you say, he's got that kind of higher ceiling for points with the fact he's on set pieces. Yeah, I don't think either of them are bad choices, really, because I think they're both going to start in those number 10 positions for Palace. And obviously, we've spoke about the fixtures. So, yeah, I think either of them are really good options.
Yeah, Eberechi Eze, he was so frustrating at the start of the season for a lot of people, and he just looked so good every week, and you just thought, oh, you can't transfer him out, he's going to come good, and then he just didn't. So I can understand those that are avoiding Eze just based on his form this season, but when he's on form, he is their best player by miles, so I can understand going back to Eze for that differential pick, and yeah, Southampton and Chelsea in the next two look good, both home games, and then it's Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, a fantastic run for Crystal Palace. Okay, what's your second pick then this week?
So is that me or Chris?
Abdul, sorry.
So my second one is Martinelli. I know he's been quite popular within the community, but he's only 4% owned, and I still think there's time to get on him. The thing is, he's going to be playing in that kind of Saka position on the right. He played 90 minutes in the last game. I think with Arsenal as well, I think those next three games coming up, Brentford, Brighton and Spurs, I think they're going to be forced to attack in those games, because I think with Ipswich game, it was an easy game for them to control, get that one or two goals and just kind of, they had the players to defend. But I think those next three games are going to be games in which they're probably going to concede in. And games in which they're going to have to score more than one goal at least, to get something from it. So yeah, I really fancy Martinelli.
Yeah, I do really like Martinelli. Obviously, as a kind of asset this season, Chris, he's struggled to form, but I can understand going back to him because he is that kind of now main man. I think with Saka out, he probably will have to take on the mantle of getting those returns, won't he?
Yeah, and as I say, his minutes kind of now are definitely more secure. With Saka's injury, it'll be interesting how he fares on the right hand side. Can't remember him ever playing there, so yeah, it'll be interesting. One thing about Martinelli that I'm intrigued to see is whether Arsenal do go into the market, into the transfer window, looking to sign a replacement potentially. I know there's been talks of Neco Williams, so if they do kind of bring in a winger. Whether that would kind of, have an effect on Martinelli's game time. But as it stands now, when their squad is as it is now, I think that he's definitely a great option. He's going to start pretty much every week, I would imagine, until Saka returns. So, yeah, I think it's a good option in one of the best forward lines in the league. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fixture difficulty rating is probably doing him a bit of a disservice because Brentford away. I know Brentford have been great at home, this season, but their defence has still really struggled. And with Flecken's potential injury, then that's not a 4. It doesn't feel like. And then Brighton, they're conceding goals for fun. Spurs the same thing, and Wolves as well, and Villa. So it really could be a lot of greens there in reality. So I really like Martinelli as a pick. It's just a shame he blanked in that Ipswich game, but hopefully he'll come back with a bang. That's a great second pick for you there, Abdul. And what's your final one for Gameweek 19?
My final one is so I was between Solanke and Mateta. I didn't want to go for another Palace player, so I'll go with Solanke. I think he's one in which I think he's been quite underestimated this season, right? And I can kind of see why, because he's not been he's not been ripping it up, and he's been kind of trickling along with the points, but 6 goals and 5 assists is still okay. And I think with kind of Spurs' decent fixtures coming up, he's still the number 9 for one of the most attacking teams in the league. I think last game week Spurs were top for XG. I think they might be second now behind Liverpool, but still, they're up there in terms of their attacking threat. And again, he's one of the few players where he's going to start and he's going to play 90 minutes. And in this kind of fixture period, like December, January, that is kind of very valuable. Pretty much like gold dust, having that caliber of player. So I think he'll do well. And again, look, saying earlier, like there's no other forwards really doing anything apart from Isaac. So he's not a bad option in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like that Wolves fixture for Tottenham. Obviously, we know Tottenham, they're just such a bipolar team, Chris. But if Solanke can come good, it is feeling like those games at home, the good fixtures on paper, the way Wolves have defended this season. I know they have just got back-to-back clean sheets, but you'd imagine there'll be a few goals there for Spurs, wouldn't you?
You'd think so. I mean, I think regardless of how Spurs are kind of faring in terms of results, they're always a team that are going to score goals. Just that's the inherent way that they play. That it's very brave, and yeah, they're very attack minded. So with him being that focal point, that striker in that team, I think he's a great option. And as I said, I brought in Kulusevski last week, and having a Spurs kind of attacker or midfielder in your lineup, I think it's a really good choice because yeah, they're just so consistently good in an offensive way. But yeah, such a strange team, but a good pick there.
Yeah, 100%. Just sneaks in that under 10% with that 9.7. But really, really good shout there from Abdul. And those are his differentials this week. What about yours then, Chris? What are you giving us this game week?
Yeah, so I've already mentioned Saar. I've also gone for another player who's in Abdul's squad currently, which is Wolves' Jorgen Strand Larsen, who I think Spurs' defensive kind of difficulties at the moment have been well documented, and I think all four of their senior centre halves are now injured. So the FDR makes it look like it's a very tough fixture, but I think Wolves could really not go to town, but I think they'll definitely score in this game. And I think Strand Larsen, being the physical kind of number 9 he is, could really bully whoever's at centre half, who's being replacing the other four who are out. So yeah, it was a bit of a close call between him and Gonzalo Guedes, who has kind of come into their lineup the last couple of games under Vitor Pereira. But Strand Larsen is playing full 90 minutes, whereas Guedes is getting benched the last two anyway. So, sorry, not getting benched, he's getting substituted a bit earlier. So, yeah, he might be a decent option this week with Spurs' kind of defensive disarray.
I really do like that. Obviously, we know with Cunha's potential ban, we just don't know when that will happen. I think Cunha will probably be fine because we've not heard anything, so he will probably play the Tottenham game. But if going forward Cunha does get banned, we know Strand Larsen will at least play those minutes. So I really do like that pick, and against that Tottenham defence, it doesn't feel like it's a bad shout at all. 3.2% owned, so yeah, love that. What's your second one then?
And then finally I've got Nkunku. From Chelsea.
Yes.
So this is nice. Again, this is one tinged with risk, as we've spoke about with the kind of rotation dilemma between him and Jackson. But if he does start, I think there's a great chance he's going to impact the game and kind of make a contribution. So yeah, again, a very risky one, but I thought it was worth the punt.
Yeah, I really like it. If it's a kind of like you're on a wild card, for instance, which is the last week you can do it, I'd pick him on wild card. Would you pick him, Abdul?
I mean, I think he might be a bit too risky for me, even if I was on wildcard. I think oh, you mean if you're wildcarding in Gameweek 19, and this was like your last week?
Yeah, because you could potentially. I mean, actually, it's probably better for a free hit, I suppose. Actually, in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're dead ending into Gameweek 19, then and you've got a transfer there, then look, there's an argument for it. But I think with this season, because you're able to save your transfers going into a wild card, probably not one I would do. But I can see the appeal in Nkunku, definitely.
Yeah, I like Nkunku just because of the fixture this week, and as we said earlier, he scored in that Southampton game, so this could be the game where Jackson does get that rest, but. For my sake, I'm hoping he doesn't get the minutes, and Nkunku and Jackson can, keep up the minutes and hopefully some form. But yeah, really nice differentials there, Chris. Thank you for those. My differentials this week, I've tried to kind of think a little bit outside the box, and maybe some players that we've not picked before this season. So my first one is someone from Liverpool who he does feel like he's fairly nailed, and he's had a few good weeks really where he's taking up more attacking positions than usual. So I've gone for Curtis Jones at 0.5% owned. Now, I know there's a lot of great value around that sort of price bracket at 5.3 million for the Liverpool man, but he's so lowly owned, and Liverpool's fixtures, as we've discussed, are really nice. And he's been starting a lot of games recently. Obviously, did really well against Leicester with that 8 points. And West Ham is a team that just cannot defend at the moment. So do you think Abdul, Curtis Jones could be one that a few people could take a punt on?
I don't mean to like kind of discredit your picks here, but I think with Jones, like if you do go for him, like he takes up a valuable Liverpool spot.
Yeah.
Again, maybe if you're, he's more of a free hit pick or a pick if you're wild carding in Gameweek 18, you want to take a one-off punt. But yeah, look, he could do well because when he plays, he tends to do quite well. Like, he's always kind of up there with getting a goal or an assist. But yeah, just I think first of all, in terms of minutes, I don't think they're secure, and I just think he takes up a valuable Liverpool spot.
That is interesting. I mean, they do have options in midfield. Obviously, didn't start the Tottenham game, but I was just so impressed with him against Leicester. Maybe that's clouded my judgment a little bit. But yeah, I understand. He's one of those players. He has added goals to his game a bit more than previous seasons. So we'll have to see if he can kind of carry on that trend in that West Ham game. The next one I've gone for, Chris, we'll see what you think about this, is a midfielder for Newcastle who, yeah, again, he's not historically been one to get loads of goals, but I think that Newcastle team is just in a lot of form right now, and it's on paper a great fixture against Manchester United. I think some people might even look at Alexander Isak for that captaincy, but I've gone for Bruno Guimaraes, 1.8% owned, coming off the back of a couple returns in 17 and 16, and he is kind of playing a bit more advanced than he sometimes does, which is kind of good because I think he does offer decent value at 6.1 million. But obviously, in that Man United game with no Bruno in their midfield, maybe Bruno Guimaraes could win that midfield battle and get some FPL points. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think with Newcastle, how they're playing at the moment, he is so integral to the way they play, and he does dictate the tempo. It's just he's kind of one of those players who seems to get like the assist of the assist. But he could potentially, he's got the potential for like a blockbuster kind of strike from outside the box or something crazy like that. I mean, I don't know if you'd consider maybe Jacob Murphy from Newcastle as a potential option. He's been very, very kind of lively in the last few weeks. I'm not sure what his ownership is. I assume it's under 10%, but I'd be kind of leaning towards him more if I was going to go for a Newcastle differential option. I think he has the potential to be very explosive. He's just a very direct winger who does take a lot of shots and kind of takes on his man. So, yeah, I think, again, Bruno's a good option, but maybe I'd lean more toward Jacob Murphy, especially with his price being so low as well.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. In hindsight, I wish I'd gone for him now, but it's all right. I'll stick with my gut. Guimaraes is he's lower owned, so maybe I got excited by that, but it's maybe more logical. And my last pick, Abdul. I wonder what you think about this. I think a lot of people are going to be gunning towards Crystal Palace. I'm a bit more safe and sure about this pick, and it is Daniel Munoz. So I owned him Game Week 1 this season, and he was really disappointing. He got an assist, I think, against Brentford, but after that, it was a terrible, terrible run of attacking returns or goals, and then he kind of had a nice return to form around Game Week 15, and really, he did get that goal against Newcastle where you felt, okay, now he's getting back in the rhythm of getting some high-quality chances for a defender, which is always what we want to see, those kind of bombing wing backs getting forward and getting chances. And 3.5% owned, obviously got Southampton this week, great chance for a clean sheet. So do you think that Munoz is someone we should be targeting to bring in, Abdul?
Absolutely, and I think if you're looking for a defender, he is the one to bring in this week. I'm actually really disappointed and quite, I guess, scared of Munoz this week because I'm not able to actually really bring him in because I've got double Arsenal defence and Trent, so I've not. For my team, it doesn't make sense to do that move. But yeah, look, he's got the highest XG amongst defenders in the league. XG of 2.8. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists. And look, he's pretty much playing as a winger. He's going to get a fair few attacking returns over the Palace's good fixtures, I think, for sure. Great option. And yeah, jealous if you bring him in this week.
Yeah, I kind of wish that I did have a defender transfer available because I would have probably brought him in, but because I've already brought in Henderson, I don't think I can double up yet. I think it's just a bit too risky, and I don't want to take a hit to do that. So, yeah, tricky. But he's definitely on a lot of people's shopping lists, and I understand why. So those are our differentials for game week 19. Let's see how those get on in the differential standings. We're going to now move on to talk about transfer moves before we get into looking at the mini league. So firstly, Abdul, what are you looking to do in terms of transfers for Game Week 19? Because you said about that Flecken replacement. Is that what it kind of comes down to for you?
Yeah, I think so, Roberto, because as I said, I really wanted to save this week, but I think, looking at that, I mean, whether Flecken's injured or not, I think there's an argument to, move him out anyway. I've got 1.7 in the bank, so I could go to Rhea if I wanted, or I could go to Alisson. I could go pretty much any keeper I want. But I think for me right now, it's going to probably be between Alisson and Pickford. I'm not sure yet.
Tricky one, but it's a nice problem to have, that money in the bank and the decision to make, because both Pickford and Alisson, obviously, as you said, with that potential double coming up, and they've just been keeping a lot of clean sheets. Which way would you sway there, Chris? Because I look at it and say, just pick the better team, Alisson, but I also understand that you might want Liverpool attackers, or you might want Liverpool for the assistant managership if you want to go for a slot, for instance, in that double game week. So I can understand not going for Alisson in that respect as well.
Yeah, so it's very tricky. I mean, I think that's one way you have to kind of plan ahead with your assistant managership and kind of be set on if you are going to use slot. Because, like you say, he takes up kind of a valuable slot there. If you do go for Alisson, then potentially. I can't remember, Abdul. You have Trent, right?
So I've got Trent and Salah, so I'm double.
So I don't know. I think you kind of got the Liverpool defensive coverage there as well, a little bit as well. So I'd be more tempted to sway the other way, but I think Alisson's a great option, and I think on a wild card for people who are doing that, he'd be another good goalkeeper kind of option. He's a bit of a saving on Raya as well, if you are looking for the premium kind of end of the spectrum. So I think both good options, but it's a tricky one. It's one way you kind of have to think about the rest of your team when deciding.
No, that makes sense. I think it's not the worst thing, is it, Abdul, to be making our only transfer in the goalkeeping department, because it feels like most of the time we don't have the kind of luxury of making that as our only move, but I feel like the rest of both of our teams are quite well set up, so hopefully it should be a nice game week 19 for both of us.
Hopefully, mate.
Well, brilliant stuff. What transfers are you looking at then, Chris? Because I don't know how many frees you've got, and have you got any money in the bank?
Yeah, so like everyone, it seems at the moment with Saka's injury, I've got a little bit of money to play with. I've got 2 free transfers, I think, this upcoming week. And as Abdul kind of referred to earlier, I think Vissa is the one that I'm looking at to probably get rid of this week. It's been a great servant, but I think the time has come probably to look for a different option. And because of the funds I've got freed up, I can get up to kind of the Solankis, the Jacksons, the Watkins. But I've never been keen on doubling up on attacking teams. This whole season, I've kind of like to spread my risk around various teams. So kind of those 3 options don't appeal too much to me. Obviously, I brought in Kulusevski, so I feel like I've got some sort of Tottenham coverage there. I've not decided yet, to be honest, who's going to replace Vissa, but I think I was thinking about Havertz potentially as kind of obviously getting a route into the Arsenal forward line, but I am worried about kind of how productive that Arsenal kind of front line will be without Saka. We obviously saw at the start of the season how detrimental Odegaard's absence was in kind of how good they were going forward. And I think losing Saka could have a similar impact potentially. So, it's a difficult one. I haven't decided, to be quite honest with you. But, I think Watkins, Jackson and Solanke probably not, because then I double up on a forward line. But I want to kind of spread my risk to a different team. So yeah, I mean, João Pedro as well, like you said, Abdul might be a potential option. Yeah, I need to have a look at it tonight.
Yeah, it's all good. No, Chris Wood is also a potential there. I guess you could look at, but it's always like people say, "Oh, fixtures aren't great," but he is just a great asset this season. So I can understand the temptation there as well if you go for that. But yeah, interesting stuff. Nice place to be in. Not much to do with our team, so it's always what we like to see. So we've got a few questions to rattle through on the chat, Abdul, if that's okay. So one from Jose Vascolanos. He's asked, he's 21k at the moment. Wow, that's very impressive. He's currently on a benching headache. So he said start 2 from Robinson, Colwill, Pedro and Rodgers. So Robinson obviously this week has got a game where really you'd think you'd be starting him, but it is Bournemouth, so they could score a goal or two. Then you've also got Colwill up against that team in the Ipswich game where you can understand wanting to start him. Pedro's got a nice fixture from an attacking perspective against Villa away, and then Rodgers has got the same game at home. Who would your instinct be on who to start those two of options?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think for me I'd go for Colwill and Pedro. I think Robinson has got a great fixture this week. He's got the attacking threat as well. Rodgers, I think, again, great fixtures and probably going to get a good amount of minutes. So yeah, I mean, I think Ipswich is a good fixture, but they are away. And if you look at the clean sheet odds, I think Fulham are higher than Chelsea this week. So I just on that basis go for that. And Villa away for Pedro is not an easy game, I don't think. So I mean, that's a really tough choice, but kind of reluctantly, those are the two I would bench: Pedro and Colwill.
Yeah, I think that's good logic there. I would definitely go for that. The other question we had was from Ricardo. He says, "Hi guys, hope you're having a very nice holidays." Yes, we are. Thank you. Hope you give some advice. I've got Trent, Gomez, Gabriel Colwill, and Van den Berg in his defence. 1 free transfer and 0 in the bank. And he wants Munoz. Should he buy him for Gomez? What do you think, Chris?
Yes. The short answer, I think, as we spoke about, Crystal Palace's fixtures going forward are very, very promising. And yeah, Abdul, as you said, with the underlying data for Munoz as well, he is such a threat going forward. And Gomez really doesn't offer that. I mean, it's, again, an elite defence, but I think you want a bit more from your defenders. You want them to at least kind of show the signs of having that attacking output. And yeah, for me, that's definitely a transfer he should make.
Yeah, 100%. We've talked a lot about defenders today, Abdul. So if you had to list your top 5 defenders, as Michael has put it here, would you have Munoz in there, and would you have anyone else in that top 5?
Yeah, I think I would have Munoz. I think it'd probably be Munoz, Trent, two of the Arsenal centre backs, Gabriel and Timber, or Gabriel Saliba, one of those guys. I still think, despite Arsenal's kind of, I guess, tough fixtures on paper, I still think that the first or second best defence in the league, and they're obviously a good defence to have a kind of long term. Probably wouldn't be buying Arsenal defenders now, but if you've got them, they're fine to keep. But then also, if you look at the kind of the lower points, the lower price points, and like your Robinsons, Castañas, even Anderson, they're looking great value at like 4.2, 4.3 million. Mikalenko as well. We've got some good fixtures coming up. So it depends on the price points, but yeah, just kind of around there. I think your Liverpool and Arsenal defenders have got to be there, and Munoz, I think they're kind of a cut above the rest at the moment.
Yeah, it does feel like those 3 options that Arsenal, Liverpool, and Munoz looks tempting these next few weeks. Adit has asked what the league code is. I'm afraid the league code kind of closed a few weeks ago, but make sure you kind of join next season. I'm sure we'll probably run it next season, even if we're not doing videos and pods. I'm sure we'll open it again next season. So be sure to check back with us next season. We've also got one from Watford fan. Always love to see that as a fellow Watford fan myself. Evening, guys. Hope you're keeping well. Evening. Also, Hanno's in the chat. Connor's asked, this is interesting, another benching headache for you, Abdul. 2 of Castagna, Bowen, Rodgers and Pedro. Thanks for subscribing, Connor, appreciate that. Yeah, that's tough because Fulham have got, again, as we said, Bournemouth. It could be a good fixture for a clean sheet, but I just don't know how to read that game, to be honest, because Fulham defensively, they can be great at home. Rodgers obviously got a nice fixture, and Bowen, tough fixture. Would you be benching maybe Bowen and Pedro?
I think so, yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, like with Castagna, just like Robertson, he's got the attacking threat as well. So it's not just the kind of prospect of a home game, with a decent chance of a clean sheet. I just think Rodgers is, a great option this week at home to Villa. He's likely going to get, a fair few minutes as well. So yeah, I think Bowen and Pedro on that basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last YouTube comment we've got for a question this week from Hanno says, using his wild card this week, he needs a striker. Has Vardy, Evan Nilsson, and Isak. What do you think about that front three, Chris? Do you think he that's the kind of three he should go for?
I mean, Isak is obviously, we spoke about, is definitely the priority pick in that forward line. I don't mind Evan Nilsson as a pick, to be honest. I think Bournemouth have shown the very encouraging attacking numbers so far this season, and he's obviously their main striker. So I think he's a good option. Vardy's the one where probably I'd be looking elsewhere. We spoke about the options in that kind of price range already with the Woods, the Pedros, even the Cunhas. But obviously, he's got this ban probably impending, so not him. But yeah, I think definitely look for a different option for Vardy. But the other two, I quite like Evan Nilsson. I think that's not a bad pick as a little differential.
Yeah, I do. I think Evan Nilsson's recent form has been a bit unfortunate, but I can also see him scoring points in the upcoming week. So yeah, maybe keep faith with that Bournemouth attack. And Vardy, yeah, it's hard to kind of get on board with that based on Leicester's fixtures, but he has defied the odds before, so I can understand it. Interesting. Now, one question we did have on the kind of Twitter was from FPL K-Man, and he was asking about best Bruno Fernandes replacements, because I think a lot of people did get him in, and he obviously got that red card against Wolves, and I think he also then comes back for a game against Liverpool, so not ideal for Bruno Fernandes owners. So who would you think, Abdul, is the best Bruno Fernandes replacement?
To be honest, I think if you've got Bruno and you can bench him this week, then I would probably do that. Like if you've got an able backup there, because they play Liverpool, but then if you look from Gameweek 21, they've got Southampton at home, and then Brighton at home. Then they've got Fulham, the Crystal Palace at home, and then they've got Ipswich home in 27. So United fixtures for the long term are pretty good, and I think at this moment in time where you've got the double game week in 24 and 25 coming up, I think you want to be saving your transfers as much as possible. So I think if you can keep him. If you're in a position where you can't, then I mean, there's just so many kind of replacements you can go for. I mean, if you want to go for somebody in the same price category, then obviously there's just the Odegaard there, but also the likes of the cheaper forwards, the cheaper midfielders we were talking about, earlier, like Sarr, Eze, Martinelli, those guys. Even if you want to go even lower, like down to like a Gordon, down to a Rodgers, one of those, and then you use that money to upgrade elsewhere. I think those are the guys you'd probably be looking at. But like for like, kind of more in the same price category, I would say Gordon and Odegaard would probably be the favourites.
Yeah, Michael's mentioned Gordon there. I do really like him as a like-for-like replacement for Bruno Fernandes around that sort of price, because those next two, although on paper they look tricky for Newcastle, I think Man United and Tottenham are both going to ship goals. So, yeah, you can get a lot of returns in the kind of immediate term there. So I understand that. And then also, Hanno has asked, would you, with 7.3 million, go for Chris Wood? I guess this is a bit of a consideration for you with your Wissa replacement, Chris. Do you think Wood is worth that sort of punt if you've got around that sort of money?
Yeah, again, it's a very difficult decision because so far this season he has been very, very consistent, but it's just the last few games his kind of output has dropped, and as we spoke about, the fixtures for Forest aren't brilliant moving forward, and although they're having a fantastic season and they're doing so well, I mean, they don't score a huge amount of goals, so you are kind of you're hoping that Wood will get some sort of return from very few shots. So, I'd maybe look elsewhere if you're looking for a similar player in that price range. But I think he's not a bad option. He's shown this season that he can be a reliable forward. So yeah, it's not a terrible one, but maybe there's better options.
Yeah. Well, the other listener question we got in was from a big fan of the pod, FPL K-Man fan, my K-Man fan, Matt, who asked, which Liverpool or kind of forward or midfielder would you partner with Mo Salah? It's a big question. I mean, I went for Luis Diaz last week and he obviously got benched. But obviously Gakpo did really well. You've got Luis, Diaz is minutes wise maybe the best pick, but there's also Jota who's got high upside in certain games if he starts the West Ham one. So who would your gut be as the best Liverpool attacker, whether that's forward or midfielder, Abdul?
Honestly, I would say none of them. I think there's too much of a minutes risk there. I think if you were like gonna go for a Liverpool guy, then I think you'd probably go for Diaz. I think going forward he's probably going to play the most minutes. But there's just so much competition there. You've got Jota just came back. You've got, as you said, Gakpo. You've got Darwin Núñez as well, who can play in that position. Take instead of Jota as a number 9. I just think for me it's Salah, and then if you want to get a second and third Liverpool player, it's going to have to be Trent, and then possibly another defender.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that there is just a lot of headaches. So if you're not going for maybe a Luis Diaz, then maybe avoid and try and get a bit more of a kind of sure starter. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We said about the kind of cheaper forwards around sort of 7 million, 8 million. Looking at someone around that price, I'm looking at it and thinking it is just Pedro. I think Pedro maybe would there's not much options in that kind of cheap price bracket, below sort of maybe 7 million. So it's tough. I think you really have to kind of go for the more premium strikers where possible, and then obviously outside of Haaland, because he's just not shown the form. It's getting up to someone like an Isak or Solanke if you can. I think. Michael's asked, would you rather get Van Dijk or Saliba? What do you think about that one, Chris? It's a tight one between those two. Obviously, both great options for great defenses, but do you think you'd have one way or the other there?
Very, very tight. I think, not to sit on the fence, but I think either are fantastic options. Maybe Van Dijk, because I feel like he has slightly the more goal threat. Although, again, shouting out that pod by FPL Raptor, he kind of showed that the narrative around Van Dijk of him being this kind of monster centre-half who scores loads of goals is maybe a little bit flawed, and he's doesn't actually provide that much threat. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I think I'd probably lean towards Van Dijk, but again, either is good.
Yeah, and final question we'll answer here is from ON. He's asked, would you do Mateta in for João Pedro? Obviously, Pedro's been frustrating, but we've said earlier how good Palace's fixtures are. Would you think about Mateta this week, Abdul?
I think it's a good option, but I don't know if I would. I don't think I'd do it for Pedro. I think there's a big price gap there, first of all, and I think you can probably invest if you have got money in the bank there. I think it can probably go to better use elsewhere. I do think Mateo's on penalties, by the way, because I know there's a bit of kind of. I don't think. I think he obviously took the last one, but there's still a bit of a doubt there that it could be Eze. But I do think he's on penalties. He's not exactly playing 90 minutes every week. Is Mateta a good option? But I don't think I'd do it for Pedro.
Yeah, I think it's slim pickings, to be honest, with the forwards. Like, if you've still got Cunha, just keep him, because until we get confirmation of his ban, he's still a great option to have. The highest scoring forward in the game. So yeah, definitely worth doing. Thanks for your questions this week, everyone. I've got to give a shout out to a couple people. One of them being Boona, of course, who we had on last week. He, of course, kept on his antics with his kind of confusing of people in the community, and this time not just FPL managers but journalists as well. It's quite incredible. He's managed to kind of get journalists thinking that Cunha's got this 5-match ban. So people from The Athletic, people from The Sun, Mail, Sport are all thinking that, and they see that the tweet he puts out, and yeah, they've been done by that. So it's always the way. Journalists, as journalists, Chris, we have to check our sources every time before we post stuff on articles. So it's incredible how much Boona has basically taken over the whole thing, really. So yeah, amazing stuff from Boona. Yeah, well done, mate.
I think this was his biggest catch in his career. It was unbelievable. I can't believe it. I mean, it was a good one, I admit, but like for all them sources not to double check the account was pretty funny.
It is really funny. Incredible stuff. Make sure as well, we're on live on YouTube. Go check out Alf PL. Really enjoy his live streams that he does. I think it's on 8 o'clock. And of course, he always, previews the kind of game week. So yeah, do check him out. He was tweeting about, potential captaincies, and I think it's got a bit boil down to Salah or Palmer probably, Chris. But, Alf did tweet out about maybe Salah, maybe Palmer. Maybe Isak potentially against Man United, but do you think we said earlier we think it's probably Salah or maybe Palmer against Ipswich? I don't know. It's those two premium midfielders options, I think, isn't it?
Tricky one, yeah. I think it's so true. I think again, Palmer, probably the fixture suggests he is the best option, but Salah in his form, I think it would be hard to go against him. Isak against United is even not a terrible shout, I don't think. So, yeah, there's not really a bad option out of those three. I think it will be very narrow margins who gets the best return out of them. So, yeah, I think it could go either way. I'm probably going to lean towards Palmer. Maybe that's Chelsea bias, but yeah, I think Salah, it's so tricky. Maybe Salah, maybe Palmer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to go right to the wire, that one, I think. So, yeah, thanks for those answers and those questions. We are going to also mention that next month will be another vote for the FPL Juice Content Creator Fund, which we do kind of get involved in, and we really appreciate everyone that did watch the live last kind of few weeks. We just missed out to the legend FPL Nightmare, but make sure you do vote for us. If you enjoy the content we do here at the Form is Temporary, head on over to fpljuice.com, FPL Juice's website, and basically you can vote for us in a Google form. It's nice and easy, and then once you've done those votes, we'll get kind of put into a final 3 or 4, and then on the live show, it will be on the live show next month. I think it's the 28th of January, and they'll do a kind of poll on the live, so watch that at 6 p.m. on YouTube. FPL Juice, great guys over there. So yeah, really enjoy your support and appreciate your support. And I have to say, like, it's the last pod of 2024. Thanks for those that have followed the podcast. It's been a quite incredible year of content. So yeah, really do appreciate your kindness and your involvement. Really, this is why we love the community side of things. And getting onto that sort of thing, we have our mini league. So mini leagues this season, Abdul, we had a head-to-head one, and Chris, as the kind of co-host of the pod, is really flying the flag well for the podcast, because yeah, he's done really well to get up there and keep on winning his head-to-head matches. So in game week 17, he had a game. To be fair, I don't think anyone would have backed Sidanth, unfortunately, for that 106.45, but it was just an incredible week. And also, I lost my game narrowly, 83.75, so that was a kick in the teeth. Talking of narrow defeats, the same thing happened in game week 18 for me against Robber, so 67.64. But Chris, yet again, with a narrow win, but you just get the job done, 75.73 there. So, yeah, well done, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a very tight scores all around last game week. I think obviously the average has been high in the last two as well. So even if you've done well like you have, you've got two good scores there, and it's just unfortunate who you've come up against, really. So yeah, no, it's a tricky one, but it's still very congested, it looks like. Yeah,
Ollie Ide still at the top by 1 point. It's incredible stuff. And at the moment, I've slipped down after my couple of defeats, which is a shame, to 13th. But still, I will take it, considering where I was earlier on in the season. And then, of course, at the bottom, we've got the likes of Deleted Player in 26th, Sugar D, and Uncle Napoli in 28th spot. But it's, very, very close, especially at the top, with just that 1 point still to Ollie Ide. But you're hot on his heels, Chris, so I'm sure you'll get there soon. Those in the chat, thanks for coming on. Appreciate Hanno, FPL Maggot, and Lewis Vanilla. He's a big supporter of Alf, so great to see him back in the group chat. Subscribe if you haven't. You've got my vote. I appreciate that, Lewis. No, I really appreciate the Content Creator Fund. It's a great initiative from the Juice Boys, and hopefully we can win it in January. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is talk about some quiz mayhem. So we always do a quiz, Abdul, which is kind of a nice way to end the pod. And so what we are going to do is what we always do is have a buzzer noise. So this could be a word or a phrase or something that can kind of chime you in for your answer this week. So what are you thinking for your buzzer noise? It could be anything football related, whatever you like, really.
Well, for a buzzer noise.
Yeah, buzzer noise. That's the one.
I'll just have the standard tannoy, like.
What was that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What was your buzzer noise?
I'll just do like the crowd going wild, like when a goal scored and you hear the crowd going wild.
So just a cheer. Okay,
Cheer.
So you basically, when you're buzzing in and you're saying, "Oh, this is what the question I want to give," you'll say cheer or something. Is that what you're going for?
That's why I'm getting confused here. So the buzzer sound is me saying something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll say. I'll say cheer.
Okay, I like it. What about you then, Chris?
Needn't you ask? Keep King Cole for me this week again.
Yeah, fair enough. You always go for it, and I don't blame you with your success record. Okay, well, let's get into the first question then for the quiz. And I'm getting very kind of, what's the word? Nostalgic. Looking back on 2024, our last pod of the year. So we're going to be doing a quiz about 2024. The first question, I will give some multiple choice options. Buzz in when you think you know what the answer is. And it is the following. Which player moved for the highest fee of these options in 2024? A. Musa Diaby. B. Julian Alvarez. C. Lenny Yoro. Or D. Okay, Abdul's gone early. Abdul?
I'm gonna go early. Alvarez has to be.
It is Julian Alvarez. That is correct. Your option in D was Dominic Solanke, but you got there early. Well done. 1-0 to Abdul. Did you think it was Alvarez, Chris, or were you just not sure?
I was just waiting for the last option in case there was a.
Are you allowed to buzz in before you've done all the options?
You are. Yeah. So you've got that option of going early.
So brave.
It is brave. It is brave because there's times, like for instance, where it can backfire and you don't know what the question is and you get it wrong. But
I think Alvarez went for 100 million, so I thought there's no way that was going to be.
Yeah, no, very good shout. It was Alvarez. Question number 2 then. 1-0 to Abdul. This next question is the following. Who finished 2024 as the year's highest scorer in Europe's top 10 leagues? Going to list some options. A. Erling Haaland. B. Harry Kane. C. Kylian Mbappe. Or D. Victor Gyökeres.
Cheers.
Abdul, he's gone early again.
Harry Kane.
Harry Kane is incorrect, I'm afraid. So you're momentarily frozen out. Chris, you got a chance here.
I thought it was Kane, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you don't get this right,
we're counting the Portuguese league and the top 6 leagues. The Gyökeres. Okay.
I think so.
Oh,
I don't know whether it factors in. Does it factor in a championship as well?
True. I'll go Haaland.
I'm afraid it's incorrect. We move on to the next question. The answer was Victor Gyökeres.
Wow.
So not many people might have got that, but yeah, very interesting. He had a fantastic year, Gyökeres, incredible numbers. So well done to that transfer. I mean, fair play, Sporting. It was a good bit of business.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we move on. It still remains 1-0 to Abdul. Next question is the following, and this will be interesting to see whether you get this. And 6 players were tied for Euro 2024's Golden Boot. However, which of these players was not among those 6? A. Fabian Ruiz. B. Ivan Schranz. C. Harry Kane. Or D. Georges Mikautza. Chris?
Oh God, I'm doubting myself now, but I'm gonna go Fabian Ruiz.
You would be correct. Yes, it's an equaliser for Chris. That was Fabian Ruiz. Good shout. It was an interesting close one there, but yeah, the answer was Fabian Ruiz. Okay, 1-1. We move into the next round, next question, and it is relating a certain Copa America. Now, Argentina won the 2024 Copa America, beating Colombia in the final. Who scored the only goal? Was it A, Lautaro Martinez, B, Lionel Messi, C, Chris?
I think it was Martinez. I think.
And that is correct. You are 2-1 up. Well done. Very well done. Yeah.
I thought it was Martinez or Alvarez, so I was waiting for that.
You're waiting for Julian, yeah. Well, I would have said C, Enzo Fernandez, and then I would have said D, Julian Alvarez. So, yeah, interesting. Very tight one there. But, yeah, Martinez was correct. Okay, 2-1, Chris leads. Interesting. Now, we go into the next question. It is, who scored the first Premier League goal of 2024? Was it A, Mohamed Salah, B, Alexander Isak? Was that a buzzer?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Abdul?
Sure. Mohamed Salah.
Mohamed Salah's correct. Very well done. It's an equaliser.
It was the early kickoff, wasn't it?
It was Liverpool against Newcastle on the 1st of January. Liverpool beat Newcastle 4-2. Yes, well done. Salah is correct. So that's an equaliser there, 2-2. The other options I would have given, Ollie Watkins for C and Bukayo Saka. Okay, well, it's 2-2. All to play for this one. Interesting stuff. Now we move into a bit more general questions where I'm not going to give you a multiple choice this time. This is where you just got to keep using your buzzer and keep guessing away. So I'm going to give you a few options of getting this until someone gets it. So, Liverpool beat a team against Newcastle, it was, on January the 1st to open up a buffer in first position. But how many points was that buffer?
Cheers.
Abdul?
5.
Abdul, that is incorrect, I'm afraid. But you can keep buzzing in, either of you. What are you fancying?
King Cole?
Yep.
I feel like it was more. Was it 8?
8 is incorrect, I'm afraid.
Cheers.
Abdul?
7.
7 is it also incorrect.
King Cole?
Chris?
6.
6 is incorrect.
Right, cheers.
Abdul?
Was it 3?
It was 3. Well done. Yes, nailed it. Very well done. It was, just 3 points, but an important 3 points at the time, it looked like, for Liverpool. And then obviously City ending up steamrolling everyone else and winning that title for a 4th in a row. But yes, very well done. 3-2 Abdul leads. Going into the next question. The joint highest scoring game of 2023 to 24 Premier League took place in February between Newcastle and Luton in a 4-4 draw. But what was the score at half-time? Anyone have an idea? Cheers. Okay, Abdul, he's gone for it.
1-1.
1-1, I'm afraid, is incorrect. So you've got a chance, Chris. You can go for this if you have an idea.
King Cole. I think Luton were winning, but I'm on the fence about 2 scorelines. I think it was either 3-1 or 4-1 because they had a really good first half. I'm going to go 4-1 to Luton.
I'm afraid that's incorrect. So because...
Cheers.
Oh, Abdul?
3-1.
3-1 is incorrect, I'm afraid.
Oh,
you've had 3 chances at that. I'm afraid we're going to have to move on. The answer was 2-2. So it finished 4-4 and it was 2-2 at half-time, remarkably. So yeah, well done if you did get that listening or watching back at home. But yeah, it remains 3-2 to Abdul then, going into the next question. And this is in a late show edition at the G-Tech Community Stadium. Christopher Ayer cancelled out a first Manchester United goal for Mason Mount. But how many shots did the Bees have? Now with this one, Closest answer wins. What are you saying?
Right. So how many shots did Brentford have?
Yeah,
On target or just in total?
just in total. What's your guess?
I'll go with 14 because I know that United concede a lot of shots.
14 shots is Abdul's prediction. What about you, Chris?
I feel like it's going to be a lot, seems if you've picked a question on it. It must be
Or have I? Is it a double bluff?
Maybe not. Maybe it was a smash and grab equaliser. I'm going to go 26.
I can tell you the answer of how many shots is 31. So Chris gets the point. Very well done. It was a lot of shots that Brentford had, and yeah, quite remarkable that they weren't actually leading to begin with, but Mason Mount put Man United ahead and Aya with the equaliser. So that means it's 3-3. It's even Stevens heading into the next one. Okay, next up. Erling Haaland scored 3 hat-tricks in the year 2024, but which other player who scored the joint highest number of hat-tricks hit 2 hat-tricks in the month of April?
King Cole.
Chris?
Cole Palmer.
It is Cole Palmer. Yes, well done. King Cole, and it was King Cole himself. Very well done. 4-3 now to Chris. That was tight. I mean, did you think about him, Abdul, or did you just not get there in time?
As soon as he said King Cole, I thought Palmer, yeah. In my head, I was thinking it has to be Salah, but then I thought, no, it was Palmer.
Yeah, well, okay. 4-3 to Chris. Next one. This is interesting. Jean-Philippe Mateta scored a hat-trick on the final day. Against which opponent?
King Cole.
Chris?
Oh, my God.
Aston Villa, I think.
It was Aston Villa. Yes, very well done. Very good. Well, that could be a key moment in the quiz, because that means that Chris moves 2 ahead. It's 5-3 going into this next one. And this is relating to this season. So, in the first game of Arne Slot's reign in August, how many FPL points did Mohamed Salah get against Ipswich Town?
Cheers.
Abdul?
Hold on. He got a goal in this, so it's 8, 9, 10. Sorry, can I just count in my head? 8. Sorry, I'm just double checking. 14?
14 is correct. He's
Yeah.
done it. Incredible stuff.
I know he
I
got
wondered.
a clean sheet, so
Yeah, I wondered if your Salah, love would help you out there, but it did. Very well done. That brings it back to 5-4. Maybe a chance of a comeback. We'll see.
come on.
Okay, in a 4-2 win over Leicester, which of these Arsenal attackers did not get an attacking return? Martinelli, Trossard, Saka,
Cheers.
Havertz. Abdul?
Was it Saka?
It was Bukayo Saka. That is an equaliser. He's pulled it back to 5-5. Unbelievable, Jeff. Okay, 3 more questions. It's a great game.
With this one.
Yeah. The popcorn is out. Love to see it. Okay, 3 more questions to decide it all then. Sum up 2024. On the 19th of October, 5 Premier League players were all sent off. Can you name them? You can name any of them to get the point.
What was that? And what, sorry?
On the 19th of October, 5 Premier League players were all sent off on that day. Can you name any of them?
So we only need 1 out of 5.
Yep. Buzz in when you think you know.
God, I'm trying to think who's been sent off this season. I can't even think.
This could be one where if you go quickly, you might get away with it. Who knows?
Yeah. Who's been sent off this season?
King Cole.
Chris?
I think that was the week Saliba. Was it against Bournemouth?
That is correct. Well done. Yes. William Saliba against Bournemouth. The others you could have said were a bit more abstract potentially. I mean, you had Fraser for Southampton, Philogene for Aston Villa, Anderson for Fulham, and the other one was Mohamed Kudus against Tottenham. So well done. That means it's 6-5 to Chris. Wow. Okay. November time. In a 5-2 win at the London Stadium, Arsenal and the Hammers scored 7 first-half goals for just the 4th time in Premier League history. But which Arsenal player scored the 7th goal? Any ideas?
Cheers.
Abdul?
I'm going to go with Saka.
And Saka would be correct. He's pulled it back to 6-6. Incredible. Well done. Yeah, Saka was the obvious option, but, you know, as we saw with that Leicester game, sometimes in high-scoring ones, he can get the odd blank. So, it's 6-all. It's all down to the final question. And this is about December. In the month of December so far, only 2 FPL players have had an attacking return in every match that's been played this month. So, who are they? You don't have to name both, you can just get one.
Cheers.
Abdul's quick there. Abdul?
Salah's one, and Cunha.
Well, he's gone for the showboat there. He's gone for both. Salah is correct, so that gets you the win. 7-6. Well done. The other answer, though, you could have had, Chris. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I thought Cunha might be the one. Is it Isak?
It is. It is Alexander Isak that's got an attacking FPL return in every game so far this month. So, very, very tight stuff. But to end 2024, we've got an absolute bumper quiz there. Abdul, 7-6 are out on top, but you finally dethroned Chris, who's got a great record at the quiz.
Well played.
Well done.
Well done. I got lucky with the Saka one, and I just took a guess on Saka for the last scorer. So
no worries. Yeah, it's sometimes if you take a punt, buy a ticket, you can win the raffle. But well done, Abdul, and thanks, Abdul, for coming on this week. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed it, especially that quiz at the end. That was it was a lot more exciting than I imagined.
No, really appreciate you coming on. Great member of the FPL community. Keep smashing your content. You're putting out these great videos on social media, and obviously your contributions to the official FPL show as well. Really great advice. So make sure you do follow Abdul. Where can people follow you?
Just on Twitter, FPL_Salah, and on Blue Sky as well. I think everybody's moved over, and Instagram.
Brilliant stuff. No, I really appreciate you coming on to preview Gameweek19 with us. And thanks again, Chris, for coming on. Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening this year as well. It's been, as you said, Roberto, a very good year for the podcast. So, thank you everyone who's been involved. And, just Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year in advance. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for those that have tuned into the live stream as well. It's the first time we've done this on YouTube, and it's not something necessarily we'll always be able to do, and unlikely to, because we're just kind of busy people. But we thought, just because of this time, we had a bit of free time, we'd try it out. And I appreciate those that have joined the chat, the likes of Lewis, Ricardo, FPL TFS as well. Really appreciate it. So, thanks again for listening. Thanks again for watching if you've seen us on YouTube as well. Good luck in game week 19. Lock in those teams for that 1 o'clock deadline tomorrow. But we've been the Form is Temporary. Thanks for coming on, Abdul. And we're excited to announce that next week for the game week 20 preview, we're going to be getting on Joe from Fantasy Football Scout. So, really looking forward to getting him on. And that one will be coming out ahead of the next round of game week 20 games. So do keep an eye out on our Twitter, tfit_pod, to follow the podcast and listen to that one. But thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you probably on the usual recording time on Spotify off Thursday. But we'll see you again in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.